Welcome to the Modern Hippie podcast, where we'll be exploring all of my favorite boundary-pushing people and topics surrounding consciousness, psychedelics, mental performance, functional medicine, living in alignment, and so much more. I'm your host, Barrett Perlman, a former pro wakeboarder turned body worker, energy healer, and well, a modern hippie. And I'm so glad you're here. Things look good.
Looking good. I'm loving this crystal.
I love that one too. It's one of the crystals I use to teach people about crystals.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Smoky amethyst. Mm-hmm. It's like the ultimate protection crystal. It's a good one to have in ceremony, probably.
I think it's a Super 7. Did you? It's smoky and amethyst and quartz and...
It's not a Super 7.
Oh.
It's from, let me see. I believe this is from Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. In like it is the Reno, Nevada border.
Mm.
It is several. Actually, it might even have some citrine in here, like call it super several. But Super 7 is like a trademark name of a specific mine in Brazil, owned by Melody, who, like Prince, she only goes by Melody, but she had Love is in the Earth is her book. She has like a smaller version and this insanely big coffee table version. But she owns the rights to the mine. But then, so that's and there are some that are surrounding there that people still call Super 7s. We call them Super somethings or Super severals, but which are more accurately all different 7 minerals. This is mostly smoky amethyst, which is super ultimate protection, and then some clear quartz, and it looks like even a little citrine. So it's a super awesome combination. But
it really is. It's like so calming and so grounding. It's usually when I hold it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to show you my geode, my power source.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see that.
Same. Excited to show it to you. Welcome back to the Modern Hippie podcast. I am joined today by Michael Bell, and he is a crystal expert. You are also a Tantra guide, facilitator, teacher, and I met you because you sell the most awesome crystals I've ever purchased. Yeah, I used to run into you at the Melrose and Fairfax flea market in Los Angeles, and over the years, bought a bunch of crystals from you, and now here we are.
Here we are. Re-meeting because of Instagram and COVID and all the things.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool. I have some crystals here on the table for those of you who are actually watching that I bought from you. One of them most recently was this, let me see if I can get this right, yellow fluorite and calcite.
Yep.
Yeah. She's a beauty. And so you started because of COVID. How did that affect your business?
Well, greatly.
Yeah.
Our business was in person, so we would set up at Melrose Market, we would set up at underground events or parties or different in-person events. We didn't have a brick and mortar, so our business was only in person at different in-person events, and that all stopped. So for the first probably year of COVID, I want to say we pretty much just didn't do anything related to crystals. We just sort of took a pause.
Oh no.
It was wild. And then I started noticing people were doing live shows with crystals. So I first saw them on Facebook and then some on Instagram. I never thought people would want to buy it online because I didn't want to buy it online because I want to hold a crystal before I buy it, right?
Right.
Like, it's part of the process for me is connecting with it in person before deciding if it's going to come home with me. Mm-hmm. But then I just started like, oh, well, let me check these things out. And then you're like, you connect with them in a different way than you do in person. But also it's kind of cool because it's so different. You're having someone like share their love for a crystal. It's like super up close. You see things you would miss if you were just walking through a crystal shop or something.
Totally.
and there's definitely something to just following your intuition in a crystal shop and seeing which one draws you. But there's also something to like really getting to like know a crystal up close and personal and hearing the person's opinion about it if you trust their opinion. And I mean, in some ways you're almost like forcing someone to look at a particular crystal, but it's not in a like, forcing kind of way. It's just in a like, I'm sharing what I love and check it out. And then if you connect with it, you can connect with things over via Instagram, via Zoom, via, we've discovered that with like meditation, that you can actually have a meditative experience over Zoom. We do it like an open eye meditation. You can have this trippy, almost psychedelic without any psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
Without being directly with that person or crystal or whatever. And so it's opened up a lot for us because now people who aren't local, we're in LA, but people from all over the country and some even places around the world can get stuff from us that couldn't have before. So it's as crazy as this whole world has been since COVID, it's opened up a lot for us in a positive way.
Yeah, I bet. And I would say I don't think I ran into you for at least the last 2 years or so.
Yeah.
Definitely since like before COVID.
Yeah.
But then one day I was just on my Instagram and I saw the Mostly Minerals Instagram up and I was like, crystals, let me see what's happening. And then you were like, hi, Barrett. And I was like, oh shit, it's Mike. This is Mike. And you were doing the live show. And I was like, oh no, this is like crystal porn.
This is trouble.
This is super trouble. And I was like, I'm not going to buy anything. I'm not going to buy anything. And then the longer I watched, of course, I bought a bunch of things because it was cool for me because I know that I trust your opinion in crystals.
Right.
Most of my favorite crystals I've bought from you.
Oh.
And I know that when you say, oh, this one's super powerful or this one's an amazing deal, I'm like, if Mike says it's an amazing deal, it's an amazing deal. If I like it, I should jump on it.
Right.
Which was what happened with this yellow fluorite and calcite, which is even more beautiful in person than it managed to be on the live. Like it literally glitters. And it was exactly what I needed right now too. Like this one has a lot to do with enhancing your creativity and breaking through boundaries, especially with business, which is, I'm launching a couple different business things right now.
It is funny that some crystals like that, I couldn't believe that some, like I'd shown those a few times and some crystals don't translate as well online, but sometimes you can still feel it and it doesn't matter. Like you could feel it.
Can't stop holding this one.
It's kind of funny that way, but
what are your favorite crystals?
My first love was labradorite.
Ooh.
Right, that's like synchronicity and magic, and then I feel like I sort of graduated to astrophyllite.
Ooh,
which are you familiar?
No.
There's another crystal called arfedzonite, which has a similar look, which is what we originally thought astrophyllite was. But then when we actually saw it in Tucson at the big gem show, that's once a year, it was like this instant, like, oh, and it's usually kind of a brown matrixy rock or brown and white, but the astrophyllite are these gold like streaks or needles that like super shine in the light. So that's it's beautiful to the eye, and then energetically it's like labradorite on crack as far as like synchronicities go, but not just like labradorite to me is more like fun synchronicities, like you think about someone and they call you or stuff like that. Not that that's great too, but these are more like guiding synchronicities towards like your life purpose. So just working with it helps you noticing the different synchronicities, like, oh, okay, that's part of my path. It also just infuses your whole body with light, and that's a big part of like my meditation practice, is working with the light, the energy of the universe. And it's kind of like Chris describes it, my crystal business partner describes it as like a chakra pipe cleaner. So it just cleans any stuck energies and helps the energy flow up and down the chakras. Yeah, it's just a special one. And that's like number one. And then like number 2 and 3 are like dioptase and sugilite. Dioptase is a beautiful green stone that like in its raw form and when it's really beautifully crystallized, there's like a similarity to emerald, but I like it better than emerald. It's like a deeper green, and that's like the heart warrior, super everything heart related, super magical. And sugilite is this incredible purple stone that it's like the third eye superhighway, I call it. That and like azurite, especially together, but it's a really good dreaming stone too, to help whether it's lucid dreaming or just to help guide the dream state. But they're more rare and stuff we don't always have.
Right.
But definitely there's a big gem show coming up in Denver in September, so we'll probably try to get some more of those over there.
Yeah.
They're harder to source. Like we have things where we can source anytime, and then things we can only get so often. Like at the bigger gem shows when the whole world of crystals descends upon either Tucson or Denver. Those are the biggest one. There's others too, and that's like the best time to get the things you can't get other times.
Cool. I feel like your favorite crystals should be my favorite crystals based on how you just described them. I've been really drawn to seraphinite. I had this great seraphinite pendant that went missing a few months ago, so I was super devastated because that seraphinite is like really connects you to your third eye and your higher consciousness and tapping into.
That just got me like hair raised, and that's a special stone for sure.
If you ever see a good seraphinite, let me know.
Okay.
I've only ever had them in like shaped, but I would love to.
Usually they are polished because that like brings out the beauty of them. You can get them raw too, and it's not that they're not pretty, but the polish. But there's also different. You can get them more freeformy, more like perfectly cut shapes. But I'll think about you, and if one.
Please.
It's definitely one that I'll see in Denver.
Do you happen to notice a difference between how the energy of crystals, whether they're polished or tumbled, or whether they're raw?
That's a great question. I'm usually drawn to more raw crystals, but that doesn't mean I don't also have my favorite polished crystals. Sometimes polished, sometimes tumbled. So, like the way we pick, like we don't do any lapidary work. We don't cut them. We don't. But sometimes we get them cut. Sometimes we get them mostly raw. But it doesn't. So like, if it's a natural like crystal with its own perfect formation, if somebody like tried to polish that, I would be devastated, right? But sometimes there's like a more rough. This is not. I'm not going to use this one as the exact example. But let's say you just like look at this part, and if it was just like rough without any formation, that's when they might polish it into something that they would think is a little either prettier or depending if they're more into energy or not. So usually they'll polish the more rough crystals that don't have like as many natural formations to them.
Gotcha.
There's some exceptions like with emeralds and tourmalines and things where they can just get more money when they cut them. But in general, they're gonna leave the beautiful specimens on their own, and then they're gonna polish or cut the ones that are more rough. So there's definitely a lot of magic and beauty in the polished stones. We rarely get like faceted cut stones like that you would put in a ring. I mean, a cabochon is different, but like where it's flat on the bottom and just a light polish. But like an emerald or a diamond where they like finely cut it into this perfect shape. Occasionally, but rarely do we get to get faceted stuff.
I can imagine that's not your consumer base.
No, because it's like crazy way more expensive, and we're, I mean, we have to make a living, but we also like. We're in it mostly for the energy of the crystal. I mean, there's also just the fun and the beauty, and the rarity doesn't matter to us unless it's like there's a good reason, because it's just so extra magical and beautiful. Yeah. Anyway.
How would you teach someone how to feel the energy of crystals?
Great question. Can I show you?
Yeah, please.
So if someone asked me that, like at the crystal booth or something, I'd probably have them pick a crystal or something, and I'd ask them to give me their left hand. The left hand is usually their receiving hand, so if you wouldn't mind putting out your left hand. And I would put my hand underneath. Now this, I also explained, this is amplified with my energy, but it's a way for you to feel energy. So I would hold the crystal, I would just direct energy. So generally, the energy flows out of the right and into the left. There's some debate if you're left-handed if that switches, not 100%, but so you'd hold it like this, and then I would just kind of like, with my intention, I usually do it for my heart, bring it out, the energy out this, and then underneath, and...
So for those who are just listening, he's kind of just hovering this crystal about 2.5 inches over my palm. His left hand is under my left hand, and his right hand is holding the crystal as he's sort of making small circles with the point, directing the energy into my hand.
And as the receiver, you may feel nothing. You may feel a little tingle. You may feel a little, almost like a magnetic pull. You may feel a little heat.
I do feel a little tingle, actually. I've never felt a crystal this way. I've never had someone else send it to me.
And this is one of many ways. It's just what
Yeah.
I would do, like if someone, like you said, like, hey, I've never felt energy, or how do I feel energy from a crystal? This is one.
It's got like a heaviness to it, which I do notice with this particular crystal, which is one that I bought from you years ago.
Nice.
It's my very grounding crystal.
So that's what I would do. And then maybe have them hold it and then just see how they feel without me adding energy, and just see if they can feel anything after that. Because there's so many things, either ways to actually feel it, or just think you can put crystals on your body as a grid, and you may or may not feel all of it as intensely as other ones, but it's always helping.
Yeah, they are always helping. That's what I love. Like, I've seen the energy readings coming off of crystals, and there is just literal science to the fact that the points are little energy senders.
Oh, yeah.
Which is another reason why, if you're picking up a crystal and it has a point, you should point the point into your body, so down into your palm, so that it sends up your...
Well, you point it which direction you want it to go. So you might want it to go the other way, like, especially if you're like, I know you do healing work, so if you wanted to like send energy, then you could put it like left hand facing in, right hand facing out.
Right.
Is one way to do it. But definitely, if you're trying to absorb that energy, it's exactly what you said. You face it in, because the termination is what they call that when it comes to a natural point. That's the direction the energy flows. So like a cluster is great for like a room when you have a bunch of crystals growing together, because then it kind of just shoots the energy all over the place. A single point I like a little personally better for like healing work on someone else or myself.
Right.
I'm more drawn in general anyway to like single points, but it doesn't mean I don't also like clusters. But yeah, the termination, like you said, is the direction. The point is the direction that the energy flows.
Have you ever been digging for crystals? Have you ever been rockhounding?
Never.
What?
Can you believe it?
I can't believe it.
That's most people's reaction. So I would love to do it, and I think it would be totally fun. Some people, that's their thing. And for me, it's working with the crystals. So I work with a lot of the miners who do that. And I definitely want to do that. It's definitely not like something I don't want to do, but it's just hasn't happened yet. I mean, I've found crystals in the ground, but it's not the same thing. Where you like go to a mine and there's different ways you can pay them somewhere between $20 and $50 to like dig through their pile of, they call it tailings, which is sort of like just dirt which has some crystals in it. You can pay them however much to actually go mining, or they might, it depends on where you go. There's places in San Diego you can do that.
Yeah, I've heard.
Where this comes from in like the Reno, Nevada border, the Hallelujah Junction mine. That might be a little more. You pay them a couple $100, but you can get like amazing crystals. And
You're definitely gonna have to tell me how to track down that place.
Okay.
I've done it twice. Well, when I was in Morocco, we stopped off on the side of the road, and I looked down, and like there were all these. As we were driving, I was watching the hills sparkle at me, and I was like, "There's crystals in these hills." And when we stopped, I started looking down. I was like, "Oh my God!" I thought they were quartz, and then as I got them, I just was going to town. Like, how many can I grab? How many can I? We're here for like 10 minutes, right. And it ended up being selenite.
Nice.
They have lots of selenite in Morocco. So that was like my first experience finding crystals in the wild.
That's super cool. And Morocco has amazing crystals.
Right. Yeah, I had asked our tour guide if he could take us to a mine, and something got lost in the translation with the English. And he took us to a place that mines crystals, but he took us to like their end shop.
Right.
And they really wanted to show us all of the fossils and things. And I was like, I'm super not here for fossils.
I want to dig crystals.
Yeah, so finally, once I got in the store, I was like, oh, they had unbelievably cheap onyx. I bought a bunch of onyx eggs for like $8 a piece. Like,
nice.
It's just gorgeous. And then a couple months ago, we went to a peak outside of Bishop in out near Mammoth, and we mined a bunch of milky quartz.
Nice.
Like, I brought home like well over 100 pieces. It's just variety. But I look at some of them, and they need to be like, they need to have the iron removed, which is apparently something that happens to like all crystals before they make it into your hands usually.
Most, yeah.
And some of them are just rough looking. But I have actually, while we're sitting here,
I'd love to see.
I have a
sometimes
couple.
I'll do that too. If I get like more rough crystals, I'll give them the little bath to get some, and some are easier to get iron out than others. You can use something called iron out.
Yeah, I've heard. Is it as effective as the acid stuff?
No, but
Okay.
I'm not like anti using the acid. I just haven't messed with it. It's like, it's a more like super dangerous.
Yeah.
And depending on the kind of acid you're using. So like I said, generally we just get it as we like it. But sometimes like you can give it a little love and it'll really bring out the beauty of the crystal that's underneath the like outer coating. These are awesome.
Yeah, these ones you're looking at right now are two of my favorite milky quartz ones that all I did was soak them and scrub them. Soak them in water, scrub them. So
and sometimes that's all you got to do, and it'll totally shift, the energy, but also just the beauty that comes out when it's just surface, surface dirt or surface iron that's easily to scrape off.
And I follow a few like crystal miners on Instagram as well, and like it's also crystal porn to me when they're like digging and then they find the crystal that's like stuck in the dirt and they don't know what it's gonna look like, and and as they pull it out, it's just this like beautifully faceted.
Of course, they usually, I don't know how many hundreds of hours of video they have of not pulling out that one, but
right.
Yeah, because it's like when they get that one, it's like extra special.
It goes viral, I'm sure.
Right.
But it's amazing to think, to realize that like lots of gemstones aren't polished. Like they literally will come out of the earth just with beautiful sides and points on them if that's how they were shaped.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, most like it's basically natural. They're just going through a process of cleaning off like the outer layer. So yeah, they come out. I mean, they're in the ground, literally perfect. And hopefully the extraction process doesn't mess that up, which does happen, fairly often. Yeah. Like where you'll break a tip or you'll crack it or you'll, sometimes you have to like for example, like it's harder to tell. Let's see, maybe this one. So like this is called a key, where there was another crystal growing against it, and that may have happened when they extracted it. This feels like this was healed, so it probably didn't. It probably had happened like where crystal came off of it a long, long time ago. But that happens sometimes less naturally when they pull it out, and it's a bummer.
Yeah.
You can tell if it's really glassy. That's usually newer, so it usually happened either when they were extracting it or in the transition, getting it home. If it's got a little bit more texture, then it happened. They call it recrystallized. Some people call it self-healed or just healed, and that's when it happened a lot longer ago. So you wouldn't consider that damage. You would just consider that part of what happened in the ground.
Right. Do crystals keep growing after they come home with us?
I don't really know the answer to that question. I mean, I've heard that they do. That's more of a geological question, where I'm more in the energy side of things, and it would be so difficult to measure that like it might, but they also don't. I guess thinking geologically, they don't have the same elements they do in the ground: the pressure, the heat, right. Part of the things that help them to grow. So I would guess probably not, or if it would be so infinitesimal that but maybe. I mean, I'm open to the fact they might.
I know. I was kind of along the same lines as you, where I was like, I feel like they do. I feel like I've seen some of my crystals change, but then the actual way that crystals are formed scientifically, it makes no sense to me that they would continue growing in my home, because
but they're also magical, and like there's an energy field and things, so that it could be happening. You're just experiencing the energetics of it, or maybe part of that energetics of it actually help it. Like I've seen crystals change.
Whoa.
Like
tell me more.
Like one that just comes to mind was like Chris had this labradorite. Was it a labradorite or sapphire? It was something that was like super milky. It was a polished stone, and he had it in he called it the amp room, and it was a very like powerful room full of his like favorite crystals. We spent a lot of time in there, and it was just super cloudy, kind of like a little like sad, almost you would call it. And over like a period of, I don't remember the exact time, let's say a few weeks or months, it literally like cleared up and like got more colorful. And that happens with crystals, like not maybe all the time, and maybe you have to really have like spend a lot of time looking at it to notice the difference. It might be slight, but this was a little bit more drastic. It was like you couldn't miss it.
Interesting.
Super cool. Yeah.
Now you just gave me the goal of having my own crystal room. Like I guess that's what I should do to my meditation room, as I have one now. But now I need a whole crystal cave.
Well, totally. I mean, who doesn't?
Who doesn't? I know. Well, it's tough. Like I feel like the road with crystals is like you start buying little ones because that's all you really feel like spending on them. $20 and under.
Right.
And then as you realize, like I have a box in my meditation room that is cataloged now, because I ended up with so many little ones that I was like, I'm going to forget their names if I don't put them in labeled bags. So they're all in there with labeled bags while I'm not using them. And then I was like, I want to do floor crystal grids. And like, you can do them with small crystals. You just need like a lot more, but it's
Right.
like way cooler with big crystals. And then I started being like, wow, the energy of big crystals is much easier to notice because there's so much more of it. And now it's like, I don't really buy a crystal unless it's for over $40 or like up.
Right.
Like I took a smoky quartz with green tourmaline on it off you a couple weeks ago, and that was a great price. It was a few $100s, and now it's like sitting by my bedside table while I try to figure out where it's going to live permanently. But in the meantime, I think you like pulled it out of your van and you put it in my arms while we were looking at something so for those of you who don't know, I can also help you acquire crystals if you want to decorate your home with them. I help do psychedelic interior design and help people source crystals.
Oh yeah.
But you put this, we were looking for one for a client of mine, and you put this other one in my hands, and I was like, oh no, what have you done?
That happens. I mean, if you're in the crystal world, that happens all the time. If you're every so often, if you just like I was saying at the beginning, like if when you're actually at the crystal shop or around the crystals and you just follow your intuition, it's not always convenient for your wallet chakra.
No, no.
The one that like draws you in is not always the most convenient one for your budget. But sometimes you're like, okay, I'm supposed to have it, but I just can't do it right now. And sometimes you're like, there's no way, has to come home. And you just have to like use some level of responsibility and some level of just trusting the universe and trusting your intuition. And
right.
you know.
I have two pretty profound stories of like a crystal picking me and then coming home with me.
Tell me.
So one of them was this amethyst with a quartz that's on my fireplace. And I got to talking to a lady at the same Melrose and Fairfax flea market. And I was like, my budget's like $200, $250. And she shows me the ones that are $200. And I'm like, And I'm like, what about that one? She's like, $450. And I was like, fuck, that's a great price on that. But like, I don't want to spend that much. Right. And so I ended up talking to her for like an hour. We're just like riffing about crystals, making jokes about crystals. She's like, oh my gosh, you know so much. This is phenomenal. I don't usually get to talk to people who stop by like this. And after like an hour, I'm just like staring at this 450 crystal and like, just like, I fucking love it. She's like, I love it so much too. It actually lives in my house in between each flea market show because nice. I love it. And I was like, oh, what's the best, after an hour, like, what's the best price you could give me on that? And she's like, oh, if you could do cash, I'll bring it down to $350. And nice. I was like, fuck, fine.
You got me.
Yeah, that one picked me and came home with me. And I love it. I love that crystal. And then
have to show it to me at some point.
Yeah, I will. And then there's my crystal, my amethyst geode that I saw at Mystic Journey bookstore in Venice. And I went in and I saw it, and it just was like, I have to go home with you. And I looked at the price tag, and it's like $850. And I was like, nope, you don't get to, no. This way. And I was like, but why are you so beautiful? And I just spent like another half hour in the store, and I was like, you cannot buy an $850 crystal. Like, I didn't have any of them that were over $100 yet at that point. I was like, you cannot, no. And I went home and I spent the whole rest of the week thinking about it. And I was like, I'm obsessed with this crystal. I don't know what it is. Do I go into debt over this crystal? Right. Like, I think I'm willing to go into debt over this crystal. And I was kind of getting ready to just put it on a credit card and figure it out later because I couldn't, this crystal picked me. And then I had a massage client who was, who I'd done a lot of really powerful work on and was really helping him change his life, change his body and his like spiritual state. And he's also really, really rich. And one day he was like, what are you doing tomorrow? I want to like take you, what are you doing? I was like, I'm looking for a meditation cushion. He's like, let me take you shopping for one. And I didn't think by any means he was going to buy me one. I thought he was going to drive me around to like, I was like, I don't even know where to find one. Right. So I show up and he's like, I already got you one. If you don't like it, we can find another. And he got me this great silk meditation cushion and set up, and I was like, this is fucking gorgeous, thank you. Perfect. And he's like, but what else would you do? I was like, I'd go look at crystals. He's like, take me everywhere you look at crystals. And we start going around and we're looking at some several $100 crystals, and he's like, is this the crystal you can't live without? And I'm like, no, it'd be like a crazy like malachite, gorgeous like $400 raw thing that I was like, it's gorgeous, but like if you're asking me the crystal I can't live without, I got to tell you about this one in Venice at Mystic Journey Bookstore. And he goes, let's go. And so we run across town from Silver Lake to Venice, which is no small trek in Los Angeles. And we walk in and I show it to him. He's like, oh yeah, cool. And I was like, oh, I completely misunderstood. That's fine. Like he'd already bought me like a cauldron and another crystal and stuff. I was like, I'm just so grateful and he got me the cushions. And I was like, I'm so grateful. So at the end, we go back to his house. I give him a massage because that was also part of what we were doing that day. And at the end, he's like, so I got you something. And as a thank you for all of the beautiful work that you've done on me. And he walks out with this amethyst geode. And I'm like, no fucking way. I never in a million years would have considered that that's how this crystal would come to me. And I also had already left it, dropped it, forgotten that, he might have ever done something like that. And so she came home with me. I literally cried when he gave her to me. I was just like over the moon. And I've spent some time with this crystal, I've spent so much time with this crystal, meditating and in the medicine as well, plant medicine, and have had some downloads about this literally being a power source of mine that's been with me for other lifetimes before and like had to come back with me.
Right. I think you also tapped into like what I think is one of the secrets of manifestation, which is the true letting go. Like, everybody knows about the positive thinking or the like power of, not affirmations. I'm blanking on the word, but, it's then once you've spoken it into what you want, then just letting it go.
Yeah.
But really letting it go, not like, okay, I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like, but if you can get to that place, which I can't always do, not everybody can do, but sometimes I can. And when I do, that's when the magic happens. That's when, and it may or may not be exactly as you thought it would be, right? But that's, in my opinion, one of the most important steps of like making something happen, manifesting.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of manifesting?
I mean, yes and no. It's not like something I'm like, okay, I'm going to manifest right now. But I do, like, especially around the power times, the solstices and the equinoxes, those especially, and then sometimes full moons or whatever. But those are like, I think of them as like slingshots. So like as the energy of the solstice or equinox is coming closer, it's like pulling you back, getting ready, and then as soon as you're like right up in that time, it's like letting go and shooting out. And so doing, whether it's manifestation or just extra time in meditation, it's a time to, for lack of a better way to say it, use the extra power that's sort of given to you without you having to do anything, to actually do something, to actually like intentionally use that energy. It's just for whatever you want. It could be for manifestation. It could be just deepening your level of consciousness. It could be exploring the universe. It could be anything energetically related. It's like a little extra push. It's not a little, it's a big extra push.
Especially depending on the power time that you're tapping into.
Right.
Like we just had the Lionsgate Portal Peak. Did you do anything around that?
I did, and it's funny, that's one that like, and that's around my birthday, and it's not one that I like consciously use as much as like just the general solstices and equinoxes, but I always feel it. And I did actually have a really good meditation on the 8th, like the peak, and I was in Belize, and it was like the only sunset I'd seen because we were facing the other way most of the time, and so we were facing west, and it was kind of an okay sunset. Like you couldn't even see the sun at the end, but it was a little bit glowy. And then, but like after that, like 5 or 10 minutes later, then everything started turning orange. I'll show you a picture. There was like it looked more like a bridge, but I thought in my head it was like the gate. It was like this beautiful orange cloud gate. So I was like, that's the lion. It was just really magical. That's the lion's gate that I'm seeing. And yeah, so, but some people are all about the lion's gate, and there's a lot of magic to it for sure. It's just, there's so many, that's not one that I focus as much on, but yeah.
What types of meditations do you normally practice? Or
so I learned from a woman named Ariane who taught like initially as like just an open eye meditation where we would like meditate. If we were meditating with each other, we would look left eye to left eye, and the open eye is actually not the important part, but it's easier in the beginning to do it that way. And essentially it is tapping into the energy and the light, specifically causal light. I mean, you can tap into astral and you can tap into other things too, but it's I don't like to use the word better, but it's less dangerous to tap into a higher plane of light, where the astral has a lot of kind of good and dark, and that the causal is just about like basically pure light. So it's helpful to have someone guide you as opposed to just doing it on your own. But then you can totally do it on your own in a mirror. You are locking your eye on the eye, not to be able to see so much the 3D, the person, but as there's sort of like a gateway, and you're really more seeing with your third eye, and you'll actually have like semi-psychedelic experiences, or I mean, they're not, I don't know if psychedelics is the right word when you're like it, but you're similar experiences that you would experience on a psychedelic, because you're actually seeing energy, and it comes in different forms. It could be your face is changing into different forms. It could be energy you're seeing, like it could be white mist, it could be black and gold, it could be all the colors of the rainbow, and then there are specific techniques to go deeper and to ground yourself and to then also like expand yourself. But it's sort of loosely based on like tantric Buddhist line, but it doesn't follow a specific like this is this kind of meditation that's somewhat traditional. It's like tapping into the raw power of the universe, and it's important if you're doing it this way to like have that positive focus, because it's amplifying kind of like a crystal of whatever's going on. So if you're like in a dark place and then you try to like go into this place, it could amplify that, but it also will usually help you get out of it. I think of it kind of like epidote, where epidote is a crystal where like it amplifies whatever's going on, good or bad. If it's good, it just kind of like makes things amplify the good. But if it's bad, it can hurt a little bit, but it helps you get through that. I guess that's the gist.
Well, what a fun segue into your Tantra practice. What got you, how would you describe, well, what is Tantra?
Okay.
For my listeners who don't know.
That is I was going to say loaded question. I don't know if that's the right word, but Tantra today in the West is very different than like ancient Tantra, the spiritual practice, right? I would describe ancient Tantra, and this is just my description of it, as basically using everything you do. This is a very simplified version of it, but everything you do as a way of getting closer to enlightenment. So how you meditate and how you live a spiritual life, but how you eat, how you go about your day, how you engage with people, that everything you do is an act of deepening your spiritual level, so to speak, towards enlightenment. And in the West, we've focused on the sexual aspect of that, which is absolutely one of the ways you can learn to cultivate your sexual energy to help you get closer, either whether enlightenment's the goal or not, but to deepen your spiritual practice, to deepen your to level up, in your spirituality. And so that is the area that I have learned mostly is they call it Western Tantra. Some people call it Neo Tantra. I don't particularly like that word, but it is a good way to describe it. Or Red Tantra.
Red Tantra. Red for love. Red for sex.
Red for love and sex. And yeah, so that is sort of the, again, simplified version, is learning how to cultivate your sacral chakra, which is your sexual chakra. In the man, it's like at the base of the lingam, which would be a word for penis, and the woman is the yoni, word for vagina. And so the woman, the center point would be a particular point internally on the G-spot, or if you were to wanted to reach it externally, it would be like on the pubic mound just above the clitoris. And learning how to build energy in the sacral and then expand that energy to enliven, to amplify, to all the chakras on the way up, and could create like a Kundalini type of experience where it's that like serpent energy just rising, and but it doesn't necessarily have to be that. That's a specific thing.
Sure.
And the experience of combining the physical sensation or pleasure with the energetic practice just is very, very magical in all sorts of ways. And just if you did it sort of not as like your absolute practice, but you just learn some techniques, you could just improve your sex life, or just slightly improve your sex life and your spirituality, or you could like really use it as a way to get closer to enlightenment, to get closer to the universe, to God, to whatever you want to call that. And there's, many ways and techniques, and I certainly don't know them all, but it's something I've been practicing since end of 2014, beginning of 2015, and I've gone through trainings to facilitate, to do healing work internally and externally with me personally working with women, but I've gone to these seminars where we learn to really help activate people's sacral sexual energy and help guide them. I mean, for me, it's the guiding part is important. Like, as you can go to a healing session of any kind and it can be magical, but if you don't use what you learned or continue that practice, it's going to fade after a day, a week, but to kind of help people to be able to do it on their own. So anyway, kind of lost my thought, but
No, it's fascinating because I've always deeply desired to like learn Tantra. I guess in the Western sense was really mostly what I was familiar with it as, and I started doing some Googling around, and I was like, "What is Tantra?" And I was like, "Oh, it's like syncing the breath and connecting with." And people used to be like, "What kind of you start dating someone? They're like, what are you into?" And I'm like, "I'm into really connected sex." And then they'd be like, "What does that mean?" I was like, "If you don't know what that means, then I'm not into what you're bringing to the table." Or people would experience it with me and be like, "What the fuck was that?" And I was like, "I don't know, I'm just like really connected." And because of that, then you're really connected. And like, is that Tantra? Like breathing with the breath and channeling that energy with extreme focus and...
Yes. And it's like, it's a part of it. You know what I mean? That's whether, you probably would naturally be able to do these things without too much guidance. And then if you had some guidance, it would even just make it that much more amplified. But yeah, essentially, like, I don't know exactly what you did, but yeah, syncing the breath, that's definitely a part of it. And if you learn to like do that with squeezing like the PC muscle, doing like a Kegel essentially, and direct the energy, specifically direct it. And then, if you're doing it with a partner, because you can do this on your own, which I actually highly recommend doing first on your own, and then with a partner to sync the energy. And then, of course, the power of two people can even amplify it more than you could on your own. And so yes, and maybe not exactly, but who cares?
Right.
Like,
It's fascinating. So do you have someone you practice with, or?
I mean, not specifically at this moment, but it's funny. So I think of myself as like wearing different hats, and so a lot of people just know me as Crystal Mike, and have very little idea that I even do tantra or meditation practice, because I've sort of worn the crystal guy hat for like so many years, and so I'm like currently in the process of like really like learning how to share what I offer to the world, and branding and marketing is not, I don't have a polished website, I don't have a sales funnel, I don't have, and I want, there's nothing wrong, I would definitely want to create a way for more people to find what I do, but for now it's sort of just like, as it happens, as it's kind of naturally in its flow, I'm sort of naturally like with someone that I teach with, like we got offered to do this TV show and teach us a course on, or a workshop on sex magic, and then now we're teaching another Power of Tantra thing in LA, and so it's sort of like not a specific, or I'm working on, how to offer that in the best ways, and that's certainly not my expertise. So I'm always improving as far as that's concerned.
Good.
So, but yeah, a lot more like in the personal practice. So you can do that where you're actually doing it in a self-pleasure practice. But you can also implement the techniques just in a meditation practice, or just even a bit as you're driving, or there's different, obviously, different techniques you can do in different times and places.
And that's very similar to how you would pull the kundalini up the chakras, right? Like you start by tightening down in the female kegels, where they
So it's the pubocoxy GS, I think is the way you pronounce it.
Yeah.
Where you're squeezing. It's the muscle you use to stop yourself when you're mid pee stream is like the easiest way to describe it. Or mula bandha would be like the Sanskrit way to say it, where you're locking the muscle, kind of like not blocks in a bad way, but just kind of like holds the energy there, and then you, as you release it, you breathe the energy. I mean, there's different methods, but one of them is to like hold the as you breathe out, you hold the lock, and then breathe that energy up. And you can do that for a few minutes, and it'll be powerful. You do it for 45 minutes, and you'll just be like in another planet, you know?
Yeah, because that there was Emily something who does the Ziva meditation. I heard her on a podcast talking also about sex magic, so I want to dive back into sex magic.
Okay.
But she was talking about using that energy and then like attaching and manifestation intent to it. And then at the point when you orgasm, sending that energy up the chakras and out as a powerful tool for amplifying your manifestation desires.
Incredibly powerful.
Yeah. So I started trying it. So now I'm like, in my bedroom, like I'm about masturbating, like about to come, and I'm like, fuck, no, hold it, send it. Wait, what do I want to manifest? Like I was really distracted on trying to come.
Totally.
So what is sex magic?
So it's another one that like, it's a sort of made up term in the New Age community, so it can mean a million different things. So what I think about it is exactly what you're saying. It's like a ritual, usually used for a manifestation purpose. So let's say beforehand, however you want to do it, you could do a vision board, you could do it in your journal, or you could speak it out loud, as specific as you can be about what you want to manifest. And then whether you're with a partner or you're on your own, you keep that sort of vision in your mind as you're pleasuring, and you're implementing these techniques of bringing the energy from just the root and the sacral and bringing that energy up and cycling it and continuing to do that, not just when you're at the point of orgasm, but the entire time.
Oh.
And because it's a very different experience between like the feeling of I'm about to come and the feeling of like you're already in this orgasmic energetic state the entire time. It's also very different for men and women, like the difference between ejaculation and orgasm. We can talk about that if you want to, but
yes.
So keeping that intention, that manifestation that you're wanting to create in mind, and then you don't need to like oh shit, what do I? It's just like it's there as long as you sort of like have it in your mind. Again, you don't need to be like crazy. Again, same thing with I said before about letting go. You don't want to like lock on. It's just sort of like it's there. You've already written it down. You've already spoken it out loud or made a vision board, and so you don't need to like super lock onto it.
Yeah.
You set that intention from the beginning, so you
Gotcha.
can almost just let it go, but it's still there. It's still in the back of the head, and then as you're reaching that state of orgasm, you're like it's like a blast of manifestation energy, and it's very powerful. And I mean, you hear so many examples of like the dream home or the thing or the whatever of creating, what you want, as this being a really powerful tool to help do that. And I just like to speak of everything I do as like tools and help, and not that the crystal or the tantric exercise or whatever is going to do all the work for you. I mean, you still have to like be in this 3D world, and you still have to like follow the signs and take action and do things. You can't just like sit in your room and just do manifestation rituals and expect everything to just change. But
Right, $1 million to come to you.
Well, that's what some people are like treat crystals or something as like the magical pill. Like I want let me just get the rose quartz to get a boyfriend or girlfriend, right? Or let me get the citrine to have a bag of money. And it doesn't work like that. It works to help you shift your energy to then make something like that happen. So if you want a boyfriend, you want a girlfriend, and then so let's say rose quartz is something you're drawn to when you're at the crystal shop. So then having that energy helps you to shift the energy you need to make that possible. But it's still just it's not going to do it for you. You know what I mean? But it is very helpful. So it's like a two-way thing. It's like it is extremely helpful, and it might be the thing that like helps you push you past to where you need to get to what you want. But you're still a part of that equation.
Right. Okay, so back to the difference between orgasms and ejaculation. I mean, I've had some experience with this because I learned to practice orgasm meditation for a while. That was like a big part of my life for a year and a
Oming.
half. Yes.
I've never actually done that, but I know a lot of people who have, and I've
It's pretty wild. Yeah. Okay, so I guess now
That's
I
more
should explain.
clitoral focused, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay.
So essentially, the male strokes with his pointer finger the female clitoris for 15 minutes with no expectations. The whole goal is just to have no goal really, but essentially in doing so, it puts the woman in a state of orgasm, and energetically speaking, it's considered that women have a stronger ability to share their energies with those around them in the world. So that orgasm energy shares with the partner who's very focused on the strokes. And she essentially, it was cool because as the woman, I got very used to, for the first time in my life, telling someone what I wanted. Like normally I'd just be like, oh, he doesn't get it. Oh well. Or maybe I'd be kind of like, could you do it a little more this way? And then like if he didn't, I'd just be like, well, he just sucks. I don't know.
Right.
But like it really taught me a lot about how to tell someone what I wanted. Firmer, softer, faster, slower. And yeah, so I mean, it's Ohm makes it so clinical. The man's wearing like a plastic glove, and you use lube, and it's a safe container. And the only way you're allowed to describe it after you each kind of share something, but you're not allowed to use any feel good words like feely words. You're only allowed to use like scientific words like I felt tingling at this time, or I felt heaviness. And I'd be like, I felt my third eye chakra start to be like, no, Barrett, that's too woo woo. I'd be like, but it's like real, like that's what I'm really feeling. They'd be like, you have to say that you felt like a heat sensation in the middle of your forehead.
In my forehead, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, I need to practice with someone who's open to other terms. But that was my first experience with the difference between orgasm and ejaculation, because while you could come, essentially, that was never the goal. You usually didn't. Like, it was just this heightened state of arousal. But what is the difference between orgasm and ejaculation to you?
So I mostly describe it for men because, well, first of all, I wanted to touch on there's nothing, I actually think the great things have come out of the oming community. But the reason that I decided not to go forward with it is because they pretty much, sorry, I'm like losing my voice. They pretty much mostly focus on the clitoris. And that's only where some of the magic happens energetically. And most of it happens in the G-spot. And that's really the center point of and a lot of attention can still be paid to, pay homage to the clitoris. But that is the G-spot, or at least a particular point on the G-spot, is the center of your sacral chakra. And that is what can call forth the sacred waters, right, of Amrita, female ejaculation, which is also very different than male ejaculation.
I love that term, by the way, the sacred waters of who?
Amrita is...
I love her.
I love her. So back to what we're... So for a man, so it's very different, like a female ejaculation and a male ejaculation. A female ejaculation is empowering. It is energy creating. It is both for both people, man and woman, or obviously if you're on your own and just for you, but it is like, I like to think of it as like starting from somewhere in your like pineal gland area. We don't know maybe it's exactly where, but it sort of starts or secretes, blesses all the chakras on the way down, and just is this magical, and again, it can be, and it's the same with oming. You never want to have a goal. You never want to say like, oh, I want to squirt. You don't want to start your tantric whatever with that in mind, but being open to that possibility. And with male energy or male ejaculation, you're losing, Mantak Chia says, 1/3 of your chi, of your energy, every time you ejaculate. And can be very challenging for men to overcome the few seconds of pleasure they get from ejaculation with the potentially endless orgasmic energy, because it's not the same as the peak, which is super magical and powerful and amazing for a couple seconds, to this energy of total body orgasmic energy. And it can, if you're super advanced, it can be that like, oh my God, I'm about to ejaculate, and then holding that and having this crazy semi-peak experience. Yeah. But that's not even something that like is that important. It's like just being in that power of orgasmic energy. Like when I went to Tantra school, that was like my second 11-day training, and I got chosen out of the hat. I knew I was going to get picked to be the demo of the lingam massage in front of 40 people. And I was, of course, nervous with all these people, watching me the entire time, but they pretty much faded away fairly quickly. And I had the most intense experience I've ever had in Tantra with this like shamanic, woman who was like the co-leader of the workshop, where it's like your whole body is just in this state of like, I like to think of it as like, when your foot falls asleep and it wakes up, not the part that hurts, but the part that feels kind of good. It's like your whole body, you can feel your aura like 6 inches above your body. You can, it's just like super duper magical. And so learning to stay in states like that, and then there's many techniques of how to do that. So like playing with the different levels of arousal. And as you get like 10 being I came, 1 being I'm asleep, playing, and 9 being like the point of no return. Once you reach 9, it's too late.
Okay.
So playing with 5 and 6 and reaching up to 7. And then if you're, when you're more advanced, maybe around an 8, and then letting that go. And then being, especially when women and men are working together, if they're both interested in developing like this tantric energy, this is a subject I think it's very under talked about, but both women helping men and men helping women on their path. Like the man's going to get soft more often this way, and that is not a bad thing. The man is going to ejaculate less, and that is not a bad thing, because women are taught, if he's not hard, I'm doing something wrong. If I didn't make him come, I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
So then it's like this vicious cycle. They both feel bad, instead of like, this is actually beautiful, this is magical, this is powerful, and let's just roll with it. Let's have fun with this.
Yeah, beautiful to come together and share that vision.
Yeah.
Instead of, I know I'm super guilty of it. Like, he didn't come. Like, he's not interested in me.
When you talk about it, though, when it's something intentional, because if it's not, then, he might have had a bad day, or, he might have eaten the wrong thing. It might not be the same thing. But if you were like, okay, we're going to do this. Sorry, I touched the microphone. No, that's right. Because the communication is also hugely important. In like, yeah, in okay, this is part of the process. This is, I'm going to help you, you're going to help me. And you don't need to have a partner, but if you're doing it in a relationship, that's huge.
Yeah. God, sex is wild. What a beautiful tool. What a also powerful source of pain for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I recently interviewed my breathwork mentor, and she does a lot of womb work, and she helps people heal their wombs. And it really got me to thinking about my womb. And I have someone I'm seeing right now who I was just starting to identify the other day. Like, I was like, I wonder if he's just like, I don't know that we'll end up together, but for right now, he's exactly what I need, and vice versa. And I was almost like, I think he's helping me like heal my womb, and heal, because the way that he treats me, no other man has ever treated me. The way that he shows up, like we're doing breath together, where like as soon as he's inside of me, we're both trying, like I'm immediately coming, which is not usually the case. And he's like all, like, and we just both come together almost every time, or he'll come and then him coming triggers me to come. And I just,
that's beautiful.
Yeah. We had this, he gave me a massage the other day, and then at the end, which, normally it's nice to just receive a massage, but I'm so sexually attracted to this man that it was great. But after 2 hours of that, we did this, and it was one of the most powerful orgasms of my life. Like, as soon as there was penetration, it was like this explosion from deep inside of me that, like, hearing you talk about the spirals felt more like what it was, because I felt it go from my stomach, and it just shot like straight up towards my head. And in my vision, this flower I started crying, and I was like so grateful that this man just shows up with so much love and support that it was like he's totally not fazed by the fact I just started crying. In fact, he just holds me deeper and lets it
That's awesome.
happen.
You're describing like definitely experiences that happen in like trained tantric work, so you're already definitely naturally inclined to do it.
Well, it was like I started having sex with this guy, and then I was like, I'm never having sex with anyone else,
Right.
like ever again. Like, this is so fucking good. That this was like what I've been searching for.
Nice.
So it's interesting to hear. I guess that is Tantra, and we're both trying to like hold back, and sometimes we slow down because he's like, and he enjoys the not coming as well. So I think for like quite a few months before I met him, that was his thing, was like masturbating and not coming, which is increases the male energy, increases the male life force.
Yes. And I would, especially if there's men listening, I would say if that concept is so foreign to you, then don't let it be the thing that stops you. Do learn some of the breathing and the squeezing and the techniques, and still allow yourself to ejaculate. And then the next time, maybe go one time without doing it, and then do it the next time, and then go 2 times, and then go 3 times. It's not something, and until you're like a tantric master, which like Montauk Chia basically never ejaculates, but that is highly not recommended unless you really know how to move that energy. Otherwise, you will. That could be a health problem. So just one of my teachers basically said, put more money in the bank than you take out. That was his analogy, right? So just and it's different between, I was doing a men's workshop at this festival not too long ago, and I was hearing people talk about abstinence and I think they were equating it, and it's funny, I didn't make the connection at the time because I was like in the middle of teaching a workshop, but they're saying, and I was asking about their experience with not ejaculating, and they were talking about abstinence, and so I don't think of them as the same thing. Abstinence I think of as sort of the act of not acting, the act of not touching yourself or being with a partner. And I'm more talking about actively, like you were talking about, like engaging with yourself or with a partner, and then choosing to not ejaculate when you normally would. But don't let it freak you out. And then there's ways of, when you decide you do want to do it, to have it be way more powerful than just letting it explode. Different breathing and using your voice is extremely powerful. In the vagus nerve connects, and I think it starts at the back of the brain and goes all the way down your heart, all the way into your sacral, and probably even below that. And adding sound, like not just a little bit, but like sound where you can feel the vibration in your body. Try it next time.
Can you give me an example?
You can. Yeah. I mean, you can be that loud or not, but okay. Breathing in, it could just be something like that, just like a deep breath, but that the sound, you can feel the resonation. It doesn't have to be super loud, but it can be. And if you're able, in a place with neighbors or something, you don't want to freak them out, then maybe you like cover your mouth with a pillow. Your partner shouldn't do that.
Shut the windows.
Shut the windows, right? Or maybe it'll make them happier by hearing that.
I love it when I know people are having sex. I'm like, good for you.
You go, girl.
Yeah.
You go, boy. Yeah. So anyway, again, I lost my train, but that was the gist.
So now, teaching people like in a Tantra workshop, what is that like? Because obviously, you're not having sex in the workshop, right? I don't know. Are you having sex in the workshop?
We're not.
Okay.
So the workshops that I've gone to are a little more intense than the workshops that I've led. As far as like demoing like a lingam massage in a workshop. But typically we're teaching more of like a close on, connecting, learning, especially the more intro workshops, like teaching people how to do the squeezing and add that to the breathing and add that to some meditation, and then be able to just do that in like your meditation practice as something you just add to help you get deeper into a meditative state, and then how to add a little bit of self-pleasure to that. And then it just depends on the workshop, but then also like one powerful position is called Yab Yum, where basically woman straddles man, kind of like in a lap dance-ish position, but like legs behind and man legs sort of wrapping her. And then from there, you can have your clothes on or not, depending on the situation. We obviously in the workshop have our clothes on, but at home you probably would choose not to. and doing these breathing and squeezing with and without penetration, probably without at first, and then if it feels good to lead into that, if you're obviously a partnership, then that's a very powerful way of doing breathing and squeezing, a little swing, a little sound, and just making that energy just flow, and then learning how to, you can learn different positions that you can get into without disconnecting. We did that in the show we did, like the sex magic workshop, teaching them how to like kind of navigate different positions while still staying connected, because that it's not the worst case if obviously you disconnect, but it can be really powerful to just not disconnect, to stay connected
Right.
as you're changing sexual positions. And
It sounds amazing. And what a beautiful way for like a couple to connect. I think that's something that's really missing, or something that dies out the longer and longer relationship. Someone's in a relationship, two people are in a relationship, is that connection. And so learning to do this is just a beautiful way to bring your energies back together and build that sexual tension and
keep that passion burning, keep that.
Yeah.
Because it can be something, like I said, like that you use as your practice to try to reach enlightenment, or it can be like something you just add to your sex life. It could, and none of them are bad. They're all good.
It's just another tool in the toolkit.
Another tool in the toolkit.
I love it. So where can my listeners, my viewers, where can they keep up with you? How can they find you?
Mostly I'm on Mostly Minerals is the crystal page. It's like mostly_minerals on Instagram. And my sort of underdeveloped healing practice, Tantra, meditation, and crystal healing would be Ancient Mystech, TECH, using ancient technology to help improve your spiritual path. And that's kind of the gist that I don't know if I really said, which is, for me, like, besides the love I have for crystals and sharing crystals and being the crystal guy, is the love I have for helping people deepen their practice. And so meditation sort of is like, if it was a triangle, meditation sort of at the top, and then crystals and Tantra are the tools that I personally use. There's many tools people can use, but for me, it's the tools I use and teach to help people get into their practice. So I might do, if I was doing energy work, it could be totally just a crystal session. It could be totally a Tantra session. It could be some combination of all of them. Cool. Usually it's some combination. So yeah, Mostly Minerals, Ancient Mystech.
And can you work with people virtually?
Yes. Cool. We can definitely do something over Zoom, in person. The world is the oyster.
Awesome. We'll have that all linked up in the show notes. And I want to add that you do your live crystal sales on Wednesday evenings usually.
Yes, thank you.
On Instagram.
Instagram, on the Mostly Minerals page at 6:30 Pacific time, pretty much every week, unless we're out of town or something. But it's a lot of fun. We have like a super tight-knit family vibe, but they're also very welcoming to people they don't know.
Very friendly.
In real life, Barrett.
No, they call me IRB or RLB,
yes,
real life Barrett.
Real life Barrett.
Also synonymous with real life buyer, so I'm not really sure which one that they're referencing me as.
I think it's Barrett. But those are a lot of fun. And just if you're into crystals, check it out.
It's totally crystal porn.
Crystal porn.
If you I mean, you don't even have to fucking love crystals. Like, I fucking love crystals. But if you do, even if you don't, it's crystal porn. It's phenomenal. And I love hearing you describe them, and you usually tell a little bit about where they're from.
Right.
And then you do a raffle at the end, so everyone who bought something gets entered in. And I've had the great fortune of like winning you pick a couple winners, but I've had the great fortune of getting picked all 2 times I've bought something. In the last month, I've been aware of your live stream.
You've been doing some sex magic or manifesting?
I should. Man, put those big crystals on there.
Right. Yeah, we love giving stuff away. That's part of the fun for us.
Yeah.
I think that's just in general. Chris, actually, my crystal partner, had taught this concept to me of, if you're feeling a lack of abundance, and this is not like I always feel like abundance because we give crystals away no matter what, but just this came to me that I feel like I should say it. If you feel like a lack of abundance, give something away.
Yeah. I especially do that with money.
Crystal, yes, whatever it is. Anyway, felt like that was important. But
It is. And I've heard that before and started putting it into practice, where like when I'm down on my luck, I am most apt to give a homeless person $20.
Yeah.
And just, here, you need it more than I do, blessings. And then it's like magically in the next couple days, like more money than I would have ever guessed somehow makes its way into my bank account.
Totally.
A random check shows up in the mail, or someone who owed me finally pays me back, or I booked way more clients than were originally planned. And yeah,
I love it.
abundance. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Yeah.
This is so cool. We've reconnected, and I love what you do.
Thank you.
You do a lot of good stuff.
I love what you do too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Barrett.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and review this podcast wherever you're listening. I'm so grateful to have you on this journey with me. Until next time.